Hello everyone, this is Warmonger and I'm this War. From the name of the channel you might expect we are trying to make everything as loud as possible, but that's not the case today. I will explain why sometimes less is more and why it's important to keep the volume in check at every stage of music production. It's all about volume compensation. It is known fact that if you play the same sound to people, once quieter and once louder, they will say the louder is better. But it doesn't make much sense when mixing. You want to increase only the quality of your sound without any change in volume. All the tracks are going to hit the same loudness level at mastering stage anyway, so there is no point in boosting gain at sound design stage whatsoever. The point is you need to adjust the gain of the output signal so it matches the volume of the input signal. This way you only hear the actual effect the plugin has on the track, not any additional gain it may add. Suddenly a bunch of effects may appear to degrade the quality of the signal despite making it louder. It is especially important with all the compressors, limiters and distortion units that promise to make sound louder. Make sure to check if they actually make it better, or they just boost the volume and fool you that way. Alright, let's have a quick demonstration. Here is a Monarch playing very simple bass line, let's hear it. And here below I've got Isotope Trash 2, now disabled. While I enable it, watch this meter on the left. This green light bar shows you the volume of the signal. So yes, once I enabled it, the signal became much brighter and more aggressive and prominent, but also much louder. Let's try to compensate for this unexpected gain, about 4 dB. Let's see that. Maybe a bit too much. So it's about the same volume once it was. But now compare if the quality of the sound is actually better. I think when you compare it side by side at same volume, it is not as much attractive as this becomes very noisy. So just do this reality check from time to time and make sure that the plugin with its extra volume gain is not fooling your ears. Some plugins have automatic volume compensation, which comes in two forms. For instance, many Isotope plugins have this gain match button, which preserves volume related to input. That is, if you bypass it, watch the meter, the resulting volume of the signal is more or less the same, but this is internal compensation and will not make up for any changes once you insert the plugin into a track. Now, if I disable the plugin completely, the volume went up by a few dB, because this cut here in the spectrum, in the low end, well, it's not there anymore. So even though there is a bypass button and gain compensation built in, if you try to drop plugins all over your tracks, the related volumes may suddenly change, so pay attention to that. This is different than automatic volume compensation in, for instance, Isotope Dynamics. Let's hear that. There is this auto gain, which, enabled per band, makes sure that the average volume of this band, even with heavy compression, remains the same. Let's see that. Watch this meter. When I solo the low end, when I bypass this band with this switch, even though we have some compression going on, quite heavy actually, the average volume remains the same. Over a long time, plugin makes up for this compression, which is why this is my favorite dynamics of all of them. For some reason, all of the Transient Shapers I know do not have any automatic gain compensation, which would be handy in their case. I used isotope neutron, Transient Shaper, as you can see here, also Native's Transient Master and Transpire. And none of them has this automatic volume compensation. So let's try to do some work here with this ARP. So I want to boost the transients of the midband, as I often do on leads. But now, for this extra gain, I need to reduce the volume of the sustained part of the sound, so that the average signal level remains more or less the same, but the transients are more pronounced. So you have to do this on your own in case of Transient Shaper. With Neutron it's easy because all the visuals are here, and this is very helpful when making informed decisions. Now, have you heard of gain staging? This is an arcane art known mostly to people working hardware. Why is that? Well, every physical device, or physical device emulation for that matter, has some range of input signal where it sounds the best and works as designed. If you exceed that range, you may encounter undesired distortion. Or if your input signal level is too low, you may not hear an effect at all. That's why it's important to read the manual and adjust the level of a signal coming into an effect, and then compensate for this gain, so the net volume change of the effect is zero. A good example of that is Ableton Amp. Let's hear that. Now dry, wet, very certain sound. But now I can increase its gain beyond some sensible point. You hear the signal gets nuts, but it's not getting any louder, because the device is modeled as overloaded, so it cannot deliver any more power, it just gets distorted and noisy. So there is some sensible point for every plugin where it works as intended, and there's a point when it breaks apart and doesn't sound good at all. Well, in case of AMP, it's clearly mentioned in a live manual, so if you ever read any manual, you will know that. But in case of some boutique plugins, it may be less obvious, and you may be working in this undesired range and just hurt yourself. In case of many plugins, it is not obvious how to control the gain or drive of the plugin, and sometimes you may need to adjust it on your own, so just pay attention to that. A great example of gain staging is my favorite saturation rack, which will get its own video. How does it work? Well, I've got this drive macro mapped to saturator drive and output simultaneously. When the drive increases, the output is reduced. And you can see when the signal reaches the saturation point displayed here. So it actually cuts the peaks of the signal. But as I turn the knob, the average volume remains the same. Until I push it too far. So the saturator affects the main signal, not only peaks, and effectively clips it. But in a wide range, it works as desired. It only cuts the peaks, this dark green bar. As saturator is nonlinear device, it's important to adjust the point of its action according to the needs of your signal, and I've got this rack exactly for this purpose. Some extreme sound processors such as Native Instruments Molecular or Isotope Stutter Edit can also change the volume in expected ways. Let's hear this simple drum loop playing here. Watch its volume. And now let's enable Stutter Edit. Well, the effect may be pretty cool, but it dramatically increases the overall sound volume. Let's try to adjust wet gain, this curve, to make up for that. Still, that's a lot. Let's say it's about 7 dB. Hard to tell with this dynamic loop. But now, if you enable that in the middle of your mix, then suddenly levels of the signal will change. And this may cause some troubles later in the mix when the volume of the signal in some part of it is much louder than in the others. So just pay attention to that from time to time. Make sure that if you include some intense stutter or resonance maybe, then you try to adjust for that extra gain, or otherwise your mix will just blow up later on, even though it sounds pretty fine at the beginning. Okay, that's all for today. I hope this little presentation convinced you that it's important to keep the sound volume in check, especially when using some extreme sound effects. If you want to see more videos like that, hit like and subscribe. See you.